And
the Athene Real Talk podcast explores controversial ideas to stimulate debate and active thinking. These ideas do not always reflect Athene's personal views. Welcome to the Athene Real Talk podcast.
He has been called the best gamer in the world, hands down.
World famous gamer and philanthropist Athene.
Gaming for Good, it's called, has raised more than $20 million.
Using his notoriety to raise money for charity.
On activism, science, culture, and self-development.
Proud to have him in the studio today. I would not want to take you on in a video game.
I realized that on an essential level, everyone is the same. I already knew that before, but that on an essential level, people are not evil. And people just want to do good. And it's rather a lack of awareness that makes them do bad things. And the best way of achieving that is not through labeling and through judgment, but through understanding and acceptance. And when I say understanding and acceptance, I don't mean that you're just fine with what people do, the damage they cause to others, but just accepting the person for his mistakes on an emotional level. Because we have this tendency, mainly male have it. I would say masculinity translates into conceptualization, while femininity translates into more emotional. And as a result, when you listen to what I say, and you're a guy that thinks really much in concepts, and I talk about emotional nourishment and such, it's actually very hard to relate to it because you're thinking in concepts and you're not really imagining as much the emotional foundation that brings about these conceptualizations. And that's why even in communication, sometimes the best way to communicate and help someone and make someone really truly understand is through emotionally relating to them and have an emotional connection. Mainly guys, what you can do is you don't look at it from an emotional understanding point of view, but rather from a conceptual understanding point of view. And that's why there is so much miscommunication between genders and why women feel they're not being understood by men and why men feel like women cannot understand them. And the reason why that is because you have this masculinity which brings about conceptualization, analyze, hunter-gatherer kind of mindset where you really structure and analyze everything, while on the other hand you have this emotional, more feminine way of nourishing the family and nourishing, social bonds and understanding the feelings that bring about this other side of the coin. And both are required for a society to function properly. And what I did was, even though what I said was really all very... So the how and the what have to go hand in hand. And the way of being able to even create that synergy is by understanding the emotions and also appreciating them and allowing them to grow as much as the practical side of things, the conceptual side of things, the more analytical side of things. It's actually quite fascinating because I've been thinking about it, whether you're more masculine or more feminine. It's defined by hormones. It's defined by testosterone or estrogen. So you have hormones that define also quite some behavioral patterns. But what's really fascinating about that is that there is a synergy between the hormones and the way you just nourish. And either way, you have the biological thing and you have the environment. And basically, if you grow up with a strong masculine father and a very feminine mother, you learn how to have both sides, and your hormone levels have this synergy with your environment and such. And it's all things that, it's quite a lot of research about it, but it's a very different thing to really understand this and be aware that and realize that if you don't take all these things into account when you deal with trying to help people to help themselves, you really get yourself in a position where you do more harm than good. And that's what I realized. What I realized is that with the Real Talk, even though I did help some people that could resonate and had a stronger emotional nourishment and went already through the emotional phases because of enough self-love and such, the people that were lacking behind, I was doing way more damage to them. And that is basically the majority of the world. The majority of this planet, definitely in the more technological advanced part of the world, really lack this emotional nourishment because we are quite clueless when it comes to that. But here comes a problem when you grow to a conceptual level, right? When you grow enough emotionally and you nourish your emotional need of self-love, self-confidence, self-trust. What happens is when your more primitive needs are satisfied, you go to the next layer of development. And you have Maslow's pyramid of needs, although it's not fully accurate, but hey, you got several needs you have to satisfy. But once you're emotionally satisfied, you can go more to the mind, be clear-headed and use your conceptual thinking and cognitive empathy and such to understand the world. But the problem is if you're emotionally not fully developed and fully nourished, you can very easily be stuck in that. And then when someone comes to you with concepts or with their more developed awareness or whatever, and he doesn't understand or she doesn't understand the need for love that you need, you can really create traumatized people where you really come into this cycle where you constantly judge yourself because you think you're not good enough. That's why I had constantly this ping-pong duality throughout my live stream, because I knew for certain people what I was saying was actually working miracles, where people really understood what I was saying and such. And then you had other people that were just constantly trapped inside this loop where I see like, where is all this negativity coming from? Why are they hating? Why is this? Why that? And that's why I realized like emotional fulfillment and being able to emotionally feel fully calibrated is essential before you can even actualize yourself on a more rational level. So the question now is, of course, like, yeah, okay, that's really nice. Like, but it's important for both, because I know there's certain people watching the stream that have already gotten enough self-love and don't even understand how that's a big deal. And the best way of me being able to explain it is like, really imagine if you would go to life where you would really have been bullied or where you really have been pushed down by your parents all the time and you wouldn't be able to do what you wanted to do and you were always punished. Like, imagine what kind of awareness you would have, how it would affect your emotional stability and stuff, because that's really the problem with our reptilian brain, or the problem with our really gut intuition, is that we just take for granted what we have. Like, it almost doesn't exist, even though it's crucial. And that's how we managed to evolve. There's, of course, many reasons why that is, but when it comes down to understanding, we don't get to assume these things are there when they're actually components. It's not because all our computers have a CPU that we can just take the CPU for granted. And then when the computer doesn't work, we don't even look whether or not he has a CPU. Like, if you want to help others, it's important to understand all components that makes a fulfilled person, a fulfilled being. And you cannot use your awareness to impose your way of looking at people with a different awareness, because that is you being inside your head. It's not looking at reality for what it is. You got to go about things always based on each person's awareness separately and see how you can nurture them to the extent where they can start nurturing themselves, because that is the key. The key is to find a way to get to people to a point where they can help themselves. So help people to help themselves, because then with the right resources and stuff and the right knowledge, they will find their way. That's why this information is very important even for people that are more emotionally actualized, as much as for people that aren't as much emotionally actualized, to understand how it works, because it makes us understand each other. It makes us understand better children, it makes us understand better parents, it makes us understand better genders, different genders. Our ability to understand how we work, our ability to emotionally also understand how we work is crucial, and that's the problem that I had before. When I was always talking about understanding, I was always coming from this more clear-headed perspective where I'm really reasonable and where I use all these concepts and I can really explain my emotions very well. But what I was taking out of the equation was that for being understood, you also need to feel understood. And feeling understood is an emotional process more than a conceptual one. So me saying these things in a certain context won't help as much as, for example, me actually being there for you and truly listening to you and really understanding you and really like making you understand that there is happening. But when it just comes to living your life